Bonding with our hearts. As I was eating dinner, planning a great escape to the outdoor souls, right? How many people are like, it's about time we get outdoors? And as I was sitting there contemplating whether to do another session so soon after the last one, I heard a message of bonding with our hearts. And that means, in essence, we do align with all souls, whether or not they arrive in this moment or later on down the road. The visions of love are being strewn about. It's like the victim mindset is a very big deal with a lot of souls who are on the path of love for themselves. That's how they rise above a lot of the negativity. What happens when you align with your heart is you start to trust in those visions that come to you. And sometimes they are not the most pleasant, depending on where you are with your family or your friends or your loved ones. It could be acquaintances. And those of you who saw the last session might say, I don't even want to touch that vision. It sounds like it's depressing or hard to hear. Those of you who decide that you're going to open up to the nature of my heart will start to see the difference in the demeanor based on where I am in my own soul. Sometimes my own vision is of love of all souls. And sometimes it's more in the vision of I have something to say and it needs to be said, but from a different perspective perhaps, or at least with more understanding behind it. Okay, so in essence, guidance is always there, even for those souls that say, I want a session at some point, I'm just not ready. That's a beautiful thing. If you ever find yourself in need of a session, I will always be there for anyone, whether or not they pay for it or not. That's how most people will honor me at some point. I am indeed giving away more of those sessions for charity donations, and if you want, I will be posting the link again on my website, and that is brendagervais.com. So let's get down to business, right? How do we do this vision of a bonding with our hearts? Those are usually the ones that we look to in our future, right? I hear from my future soul self. This is the part that most people get blown away by. It's brought back to me by my own soul. We align with those visions of duality that some people are also interested in, right? Yin and yang, right? Those higher visions of spiritual alignment can indeed come through on their own, it's like their own terms. So many people who are on the path of love just want to hear about what that means for us. As a unit of discovery, that's what we're going to call this one too. It's a unit. The family unit is one aspect of who we are. But in essence, I can bring forth those visions of love from those that I don't even know. That would be that essence of what others would say is channeling. But in essence, if my vision is of all, that means I connect to all in essence. It's not all the time. I'm not always there in that vision of loving myself fiercely, right? That soul guides me in his music, guides me in his vision that he laid down. And that's the essence of Freddie Mercury. And those visions still bring through the wisdom for other souls. And that vision is very much of honoring of the wisdom and the choices that we have made in this country and others to do the work of love for all souls. And what that means is you may not like who I am as a man, right? He was a man at one point. However, as we know, all of us start to rise in our vibration and we start to feel more aligned with who we are. Now, in this moment, or in this woman, she says, I still feel very comfortable being in the moment as a female. But I hear those visions of love from those souls who place themselves in that vision of I am a male, and I love who I am as a male. And this is not to dishonor any of those visions. You see, many males are still in the mindset of, I'm afraid of my visions when I have those dreams that have me visioning myself with some other man, or maybe it's just some other woman who's not your partner or that kind of stuff. We're going to get to the nitty-gritty. Sometimes those visions are of future loves. Sometimes they are of other paths not taken. This is the nature of the duality of my mind. Do I come through strong for those souls who want to have their love brought to them? So it's not just about, giving you your personal soul session, because in essence, I would have to hear from your soul from many different levels of understanding, right? But the majority of people are more concerned about who they are in this vision. That's the strength of my soul session, by the way, is that you get who you are here, and those other pathways open up to where you might land. I'm international in my mind. That's the strength of who I am. I go there. I got one opportunity so far to do that vision. At some point, it comes in spades. I already know that patience is a virtue. I already know that this is a good year for my family. And I already know that it opens up for me in 2022. Okay? Those are the visions of love that you get handed back to you from your soul. And when you keep planting those seeds of, I am there, I just haven't reached it yet. Okay. That's that nature of planting those seeds of success or of love or of determination for your soul. I keep my visions very high. I honor the majority of the souls who came to me. And I have to honor all souls, even those souls who hurt me. Sometimes I take out my anger on those who are close to me, right? We have to deal with this. We have those emotions. So it's not about denying everything and shoving everything down. But maybe we do need to look at what's going on the inside. Am I afraid for my life? That's some people. Some people have good reason to be fearful for who they are in their mindset. Others are more in the, I just want to have fun. You see, for me, I get my signs handed to me left and right. I created a vision from another system of love where I get this vision brought to me all the time now of joy and ecstasy. It's my totem, right? How many people want to know what that is? It could be an animal or an object or whatnot. We all have these systems that we believe in. Others will feel that vision when they see a cross or a vision of an angel or something like that. You see, I used to imbibe upon the vision of an angel, but I never did envision the vision of Christ on a cross or anything like that. That was not my symbols. Those were not my symbols, and that was not my guidance. Okay, it was more of just a general angel energy, because in essence, I connected with one as a child. I did not see the vision. I assumed it was one for me. And that's what made it not scary. Okay? You start hearing the stories that I experienced, and you would understand why, as a child, I would not want to place that in some other category. So it's one of those things, even now I don't vibrate in that vision because I'm with my own soul. But I hear some of those visions of destruction that people lob at me. If you are enjoying the vision of science fiction and fantasy, we want to talk about those people who are in alignment with spiritual mindset, and yet you're going to start seeing some of the contradictory natures of what can happen. If it's positive for you, put it out there and say, this is a great deal. Like this idea of doing charity work, right? It's $50 at least for me to do the walking that I'm doing for the end of epilepsy. Okay? That's the minimum amount. The normal session rate would be $200, so it's a bargain. If you're really in dire straits, contact me and I will see what I can do. Your guides will let me know whether or not that vision should come through or not, okay? Now, there's a reason that comes through. Now, I want to honor all souls, and I want to say thank you so much for that vision of love of your own hearts. So when we say bonding with our hearts, a lot of times we go to the vision of others. This time, it is often about needing to come to our own visions of love, our own hearts, our own souls. And how do we do that vision where we start to get those, wise words that are brought through? I'm getting a lot of people who are loving my words, even though they're thinking I'm some other lady. Okay, now that's an interesting story. I'm connected to another Brenda Gervais in a family way, very distantly, through marriage, most likely. And our lives are intersecting on various levels of understanding. Now, due to my own impatience with some of the people online, I used to say, oh my gosh, these people are confusing me. But now we are intermingling our it's like the affairs of the mind. There's no affairs of the mind, by the way. I have this vision of someone who's saying, you're still married. I am not married at this point. And that's just the nature of it. But what we have going on is the nature of people who are maybe having those experiences and then they get flooded with guilt. It is not something for you to feel guilty about if you're having those experiences in the dream state. Okay, that is sometimes a processor dream for somebody. Others are very lucid. You're going to notice the difference when you're with your soul. They give you some that aren't so pleasant if you're in the mindset of I need to be adjusted. Okay, some people will say that they do have those dreams and they want the adjustment made so that they don't experience it. Sometimes I have that vision. It's not about being bad or good. It's about where I'm falling in my mindset. And sometimes I'm connecting with people who I've just listened to their songs, and it gets a little strange sometimes. Now, I also want to talk about that nature of our own hearts are open wide. That's where some of those people will come in and say, I need to put boundaries around my heart. So I'm not just an open book to everyone and anybody. But to be honest, my initial guidance was that I was to be as open as I can about the experience of soul embodiment so that those who want to partake in it will, have an idea of what to expect potentially. I don't reinforce anything negative, really. I don't want to go down that path because your vision is very much light, right? There are so many people who have their visions just brought to them willy-nilly and they just love hearing from their angels. And then there are some of us who are hearing from not just the angels, but we might be hearing from souls who we will find in the future to be our, well, some people would say soulmates. We're talking about soul groups at this point. Because when you do soul embodiment, the idea of a mate starts to get a little tricky. And we think you guys might want to, start clearing up those visions about what a soulmate is or isn't. It doesn't mean that they are always going to be the person that you meet in this world or on this plane. Okay, you might be meeting up with your loved ones from the other side after they have passed from this plane. That's very common. Okay, I've had that experience, many experiences, and it is not easy sometimes. Sometimes I'm grateful for that vision, and other times when I'm still trying to live my life here, and this is why I usually don't go to that vision of what some would consider to be a medium, is because I don't want to go to those heavenly realms all that much. Because those visions are of their hearts in another plane creating beauty. But I'm not able to experience their beauty here in this plane like I would another, friend or soulmate or whatever. Okay. And sometimes those visions actually don't want to be contacted by us. They want to be able to create their beauty from another level of understanding. They raise their vibration almost immediately when they cross, for the most part. And so for us, we can often feel pretty dense. And that's the nature of many who are empathic. You will notice the distance that people are going to start placing between them and me if they feel like I'm connecting with their own soul. Your souls are beautiful. Very few souls get told like negative things unless there is a tragic situation on the line, which there is in some ways, right? I don't need to tell people their fortunes. That's what some people would say. You should go online and start handing people their fortunes, and then they might come and then they might tell you, more about what's going on in their hearts. I get told about people's souls who are so strong, they come at me in their mindset sometimes, right? Not usually. What I'm dealing with are my own souls, my own visions, who are trying to get me into a different vibration of love so that I can feel good and happy and be a joyful and ecstatic soul. I had to go and reassess my vision for being what some would consider an ecstatic, or, which is a type of person who can hit that kind of vibration. And when you go to those visions, then it attracts a lot of people. And there's a lot of people who assume it's about, sex instead of love and adoration and just the emotions of ecstasy. So if you've ever had that experience of being almost euphoric and in the beauty of love, it's not the same. No one will ever have that experience. And unless they've gone to the soul level understanding, right? It's a different way. Some people might be tapping into their souls if they go down that path. Highly unlikely that they're raising their vibration based on where they are. Some people do because they use it as a spiritual boost. Okay, now for me, all I have to do, usually, not always, especially if things are really rough for me, is have my little totem bird come across my heart and I'm already there, happy. I created a vision in which my reality is reflective of what's going on in the inside. And I know that there are those souls who are doubting that vision. I can recreate the vision of love for many souls. So let's see. How many people want to have their fortunes read? It's not a fortune. I'm not a gypsy, right? I would identify more with a gypsy in some ways than I would some other kind of, religious soul. Okay. But I do really, truly imbibe more upon the spiritual path than I do any other. Because there's a lot of beautiful visions there that I can see raising people up. And people are trying to do it in a way that is non-invasive to their own hearts. That's what I love about that vision, right? I want to be able to tell people, hallelujah, right? There were souls in my vision who were very much of faith, who were saying, I want her to start sounding more like a preacher and see if my vision comes true. Am I going to be having the religious soul session at some point? If you're in the vision of religion and you're coming across me, I can do that vision for you. I've done it for the Catholic diocese. I have brought through various visions of Christ and Jesus as he was, right? As the soul is. There are various visions that people come through with. And that's the nature of more that idea of love from those higher levels. What that does, in essence, is place that burden on me of trying to prove to somebody that I'm the real deal. And in essence, I'm not here to reinforce the visions of religion. And people are going to wonder why. And it's because one of those basic tenets that I chose to align myself with was that I never needed that path to do what I did. And my vision is that there are plenty of people who are lifting themselves up in the beauty of their faith. Faith doesn't always equal religion. Okay, so I'm of faith in my heart, my soul, my higher source, my wisdom, my guidance, right? But that's different than an organized, system that has some rules to it. I'd like the freedom of decision making to be open and free. Okay, that's what it's about, freedom. Freedom from those visions of this is how I am to be. But if you're in that vision and you want to be lifted up into that vision of I'm the beautiful, Michael energy, right? The Archangel Michael. That vision still hangs with me because I have called upon that energy. At one point, this is how strong my soul was at that point. I was literally calling out to several angels because I was reading these little mantras in a book. And that's why they come to me. But I need those healing angels sometimes. I have my heart handed to me by my soul sometimes. And they say, what are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay? So gas stops becoming harder to find. So these are those visions of the destruction of the oil industry that want to come through. I have people who have their partners who are in the gas and oil industry, and we are going to say that there is not going to be a destruction of it as much as there will be that vision of it could go on for a while. People are wanting to know, is there really going to be a gas shortage? It can't happen indefinitely, correct? Just like the pandemic is still going. So while we are at that vision of destruction, right? It's not. Too many people are placing their visions on the pandemic is over. It is not over, and it will not be over until we get past this idea that it is only about our country and not the globe. So when I put that prediction out there that it is going to be 2 to 3 years, you can count on it that it will take that long before that vision is far enough out. It's like outside of the reach of our mindsets where we don't keep creating that. Or if people are smart enough to do what's right? Most people get that feeling that Brenda's going to start preaching about pandemic. The gas shortage is going to cause another delay in our hearts. So many people are going to want to travel, and if that vision is so expensive, where do we go? We tend to stick at home. Why? Why are we staying close to home? This is where people are going to start to understand we need more time to do the work. What work are we working on? Right? Connecting with our own souls. Everybody is so worried about getting out and about and connecting with other souls. They have not figured it out yet. That's what that message is saying. If that vision does indeed come true, it will be because the work wasn't done during the pandemic. That usually means there's We were going to say the Nation of Islam is going to be holding hostage some of those ideas. Someone else is thinking about that. We're going to blame them. That's not the way to go. We're not blaming the Middle East for all the soul's problems. That's like the dead man walking if you want to go down that path. Okay? This is where we have to get out of that vision of destruction of other souls or of other countries, other nations. You know, it could be tribal nations. It doesn't have to be countries. Okay, there's plenty of groups that don't align with their countries who are getting demolished, right? We see a lot of that destructive vision, but we're not going to go down there. We want to kind of keep this a little light, okay? But if that's what people want, they want to know what's going to happen. Usually those visions that Brenda gets, she gets a lot of those destructive visions. It can be hard on her. She got rid of that vision of the shots fired. She's like, this is crazy. This can't be happening this often. What's happening? Every time she opens the news, there's another mass shooting if you're defining it as 4 or more people. Okay, that's what one station does. They define it as if 4 or more people are shot, and killed. They don't have to be killed. We see the destruction in just one soul every day, but it's usually within the vision of a crisis of some other sort. We've lost touch with it's like the vehicular manslaughter that someone else is planning on doing in their mind. There is another soul of a soul who's saying she's tapped into the nature of those souls who know how to give her the future, but she's not yet writing it down enough to do the vision of let me try to change the reality of that situation. That's how strong she is. At some point, she aligns with one of the strongest psychics of all time. It is not a psychic. He was more in alignment with I was of love. We don't place a vision of that vision, Nostradamus, on that vision of psychic. Others would claim that. He doesn't claim it as that, and there's a reason why. We'll bring that man's vision through at some point if we go to where he was at that moment, but we could also go to the higher level wisdom of what that says. We're not here to change the destiny of anyone on the screen at this point, unless you yourself want to do the work. See, there's a difference between the people of Islam and the Nation of Islam. And that's something that we're going to have to go into at some other point. Okay? There's distinctions being made between many souls about their hearts, their loves, their wisdoms, and that's the nature of it. There's a group that would align with that idea of the Nation of Islam, okay, versus the people of Islam, okay? You'd have to look it up. But anyways, to be honest, I want to align with those souls who are of love for their own hearts. So what is it that we're looking for when we say, how do we bond with our hearts? Others would say, let's just enjoy our lives. That's a big part of it. However, when we do so, are we aligning with the soul of soul, or are we doing what we think others want us to do? And then we get that feeling of acceptance from others that then makes us happy. That's usually where I ride. Okay, I love who I am in my mindset. I know my mindset, for the most part, challenges certain ideas that people don't align with. So how many people are going through the life realizing I do what I do because I thought people wanted that vision, right? How many people want to hear the future? A lot of people don't want to hear the future. Would you want to protect your family if your family was in trouble? You see, that's where some people are saying, I could go with those visions of, political unrest or, military alignment and various visions. I'm not going to be hit in any way. My soul told me I will never bring forth anything that will come back to me in a negative way. Whether or not people enjoy it or not is a different story, but not with the physical, harm and the physical abilities. My physical abilities are not there where I'm bending spoons or, The healing aspect of love, that's a different story. That's energy work. I can tell you where people are starting to feel the vision of destruction. When you embody your soul, you're going to feel vibrations and movements within your whole being. Most people would freak out and have a heart attack, right? No. If you were starting out slow, like Brenda can get into that vision of love for her soul. It wasn't all at once. I was feeling the vibrations in my mind, in my head first. And I was having a good time because I was using a system that had me thinking I was, checking into the vibration of the earth. Then I went through a very stressful period where I thought I was connecting someone here, like with telepathy or something. And I didn't know if it was like someone down the street or, I have so many funny stories. Oh my gosh. I was worried when I would do like credit card transactions that I was going to be sending out my credit card number to somebody else. And it was that was so stressful. It was so horrible. But it was funny now, okay? That's why people are like, oh my God, why didn't you go to Jesus? It wasn't like that. This is where the nature of when you're having all of your information brought to you sometimes, right? And at first it was just pulses. I wasn't actually hearing, the words or the wisdom brought to me. And I was doing like yes or no, like, SOS, almost a little bit, okay? And I have to kind of slow down because I'm just getting started. But it's true. Okay, so I figured out the system that there was something going on because I was getting these pulses and they were kind of like random, sort of. And then I was like, okay, well, let's do like 3 for yes and 2 for no. Thousands of questions I asked in my mind based on the pulsing of those visions in my mind. That was the start of the communication aspect of who I was. So, how many people want to know what their healing modality is going to be in the future? Blending with your family tree is part of it. You want to open up the nature of your heart to your family tree. Sometimes you will get 1 or 2 who try to come through and throw you off, right? Because they're more in alignment with their vision of their family or what their family needs, or like some people will say, well, Brenda, you might be watched by someone and you're going to cause conflict in their hearts. It's in their minds. Their hearts would be very strong. I'm not here to cause chaos, am I? Some of us do. That's when we go to that vision of light. It can cause chaos, but in essence, usually there's a very wise soul behind the vision of any kind of light work. Okay? Gandhi was a chaos causer in his mind, yet he's revered by many, disgusted by many, right? No, he gets disgusted by some of my stuff, I imagine. I don't know. He's in alignment with her vision of I hear those visions, right? But he disgusted so many souls, and he says you got to ride that wave of love and say they're on their own path. I can just rise high in my vibration. He knew he was hearing from his soul. He didn't know what to say or do. He just said, I just kept going on my vision of love for Jesus and that vision of my own soul. And he said I didn't know who I was contacting. That was his vision. He just knew it was a higher vision of who he was because he was getting the same, like, I need to go here and there. Guided by God is one of his visions that he also put out there, that vision of God, okay? Now, in essence, for me, that's why the majority of people don't understand why I go to Source, and it's so I can align with those souls who don't claim any higher vision like, Gandhi or God or Jesus. I aim high with those of science as well. And technology, I'm going to be there. That's why I get some of my stuff handed to me. They still want me doing those visions of periodic table. It's not for the predictive future in that one. There was a reason I wasn't doing what I was doing. I was not aligning with the scientist as much as what I should have. That's my own fault. Some people will say you're not in the science mind enough to bring through those visions of health and safety. Okay, what vision of love do I need to bring through? So let's talk about the bending of time. Bending of time is what happens when we bring our past to us or our future. We're all there creating in various visions. So time is an illusion, which is what most people will hear about in a spiritual paradigm. But if I bring through the vision of Gandhi, it wouldn't be how he was in his moment. He would be creating from a different perspective at this point. I want her to align with her highest soul. No more visions of Jewish settlers only. Okay, so that's the nature of it. He would say, we are crying with how many people keep calling out for the Jewish settlers to like release those visions. She was hearing it nonstop. And here they are being attacked again, right? And some are doing the attacking in their mindsets. Okay, calling out for death. Okay, we want to align with those visions of neutrality in our hearts if we can. That vision will not end. It's like the nightly news. Okay, she doesn't watch the news very often. I don't watch the news. I align with the news. But his vision is make sure you align with the higher vision of it. So she goes to various visions of the news to see where her visions land. And usually they're on target. That's how she knows she's getting the future. It's her soul telling her, here's what you're going to be reading about. Now, sometimes those visions are long in the future, and it is ridiculous how long some of them are. But for those of you that are saying, I want my future handed to me now, there's a reason I'm not doing so much of those future predictions on the guidance for the soul. And that's because it's still being worked out for it's like the dramas. I was on this vision of unwinding something very significant from my own heart. And I have to put that aside in order to do the vision of religion for certain souls. I don't want you to feel like you're less than. And yet, I don't want to feel like I'm being put in a place of less than either if I don't align in that vision. Okay. It's a natural inclination to lash out at others who don't honor your faith in their mindset. But all faiths are being honored. So if Nostradamus came through, he would say, there's going to be a lot of wars, right? We're going to start hearing about the switch in a few years. It's going to cause disruption in many people's minds. Those of faith are going to need to hold on because that vision is very strong. There are a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, doing a lot of soul work and aligning with those visions of there's going to be a big change come 2027. I've already embodied my soul. That's one aspect of being able to ride that wave, because there's a lot of love that's going to be, it's like the sheltered souls, right? You don't need to go build a bomb shelter. It's not that kind of vision. It's an internal combustion engine. Basically, that's the nature of soul embodiment. You bring it through on the inside, not on the outside. I don't have to worry about it. It's just a beautiful expression of love for those souls who are going through the changes of soul. Lost in Space. That's another vision of a show. It will be coming back. it's a favorite of hers. We want to honor her soul and say, it's about time, right? It will indeed involve space souls at some point. We are indeed opening up to the nature of the vortex. They come through a vortex in our hearts. When this planet is ready for that vision, that's when they show up. So the fact that they have been there all along, it is a vortex. It is not an inner awakening. Many will start to see those visions of love come through. However, it's like the vortex of love. They are saying, we are ready to honor your souls. They may not be in the same vision of love as all, but they do indeed align with our hearts. It's like they're naked in their abilities to do damage, but they have no desire. If they wanted to, they would have already done the damage. Okay, these are those souls of love and honoring for our species. Okay, we produce a lot of visions of negativity when it comes to those ideas of the space race, right? Why would we assume we're the only ones, right? It's not an inner vision, but it is part of it. Our alignment with who we are has to be of peace before they will show like their visions for the most part. And that is because it's about opening it. It's like the Operation Necromancy. Someone is thinking about some kind of weird video game. There is no necromancy in this vision, but there are other places where that does exist in certain hearts, right? That's not a heart-centered soul that's doing that, right? It would not be considered that. There were a lot of visions of destruction that were around before we imbibed upon the vision of the Christ soul, or Jesus as he would have been, called. And there are other visions of beauty that were never acknowledged because they were not allowed to. Brenda honors those visions of those females that never would have had their visions honored, and most likely they would have been, burned at the stake or sacrificed or whatnot, men and women. Okay, it depends on the time period in which they would have been placed. They would have placed themselves there for a vision. So now, I want to honor the vision of life. I want to honor the vision of love. And I want to say thank you for joining me. To bond with our hearts even more, I would say honor the visions of your loved ones by saying thank you for showing me who you are. If I don't agree with you, I can honor that vision. I may be upset, but I don't have to say happy birthday to Michael Irely. His visions being honored by his friends and family, who in his mind he lives, it's like they've lost them, right? Those are those visions of love that will always be with us. Whether or not we choose to acknowledge that vision as loving or not, it's like that high vision. Okay, those visions of families are still very high. And most of us are in that vision of, I just need to know that I'm still being loved by my family, even if I didn't agree with who they were in this vision. And that is absolutely true. You do align with your hearts more often than not when you cross to the other plane. There's no need to be on your knees begging for forgiveness or whatnot, okay? There are souls who are worried about their visions. You don't need to worry about your visions. You're just fine. Others are more in that dire straits kind of mindset. We would say that vision is strong. We will have to honor that in a separate kind of session that's not so public. Now, that's the nature of where we go. Hardy, heart. Someone's laughing because they know, oh, that's that vision of a medium. It's not It's where I go with my own soul. I align with my heart. My heart goes in many different dimensions. I don't have to just hit those heavenly planes. So I want to say thank you for your love, your adoration, your choices, your views, your beauty, your guidance. They're all for us to imbibe upon. Take care of your mindsets. Take care of those visions of love. Take care of those visions of destruction. We want to create a beautiful place here on this planet for all of our hearts to imbibe upon. It's not always easy, and yes, there are souls who are causing heartache in our hearts, but it's the nature of it. We don't need to feel beautiful all the time. I usually feel beautiful, but often I don't. Beauty has nothing to do with who I am on the inside in my mind most often. And that's what your soul will come here to say. Just because your mindset is messed up in your words, right? I messed up in my mind. Well, that's okay. Let's be honest about it. And let's take a beautiful expression, turn it around and say, at least I can acknowledge that vision that I didn't create the most beautiful expression ever, right? That's where I'm at sometimes. Sometimes my beauty is a little too shallow, right? Am I worried about how I look more than I am my vision in my heart? Honestly, it's okay. No one ever gives out my address to anybody else. Okay, so this is for those souls. I'm going to be aligning with those souls. At some point, I will be opening up my vision to those souls for sessions of groups. So I want to say thank you for honoring me with your love and attention. The adoration is from my own heart and soul because that's the beauty of who I am. That's what happens when you align with your own soul. You start to feel the adoration. The cheering on of all souls is here. Thank you for your love and take care and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Good night.